I know you're gonna dig this.
Hi, this is Stan the Man, host of the Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center's Funk Chronicles Talkback, recorded live here at DATV Studios in Dayton, Ohio, with my special studio guest today, Mr. Philip Bass, the author of Pour Some Soul Water on Me. That's right. How are you doing, Mr. Bass?
I'm doing fine, Stan.
Good, man. We are glad to have you here today on Funk Chronicles because this is an important thing that we do here at DATV is get the word out about the Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center. And Philip, you are an author of a book.
Thank you.
And tell me a little bit about how did you get into the wanting to do the book, and what made you just so interested in funk music?
Well, Stan, let me say thank you to you and David Webb and the Funk Music Hall of Fame and the Funk Center and anybody else involved in having some attention on what happened 50, 40 years ago. And I was involved locally here in Dayton with a band called the Majestics. And we pride ourselves on not losing a talent show, from 1964 to 1968. And then I had an opportunity to go to Kent State University. I'm sure we're talking about Pour Some Water on Me, Dayton, the Funk Center, the funk capital of the world. But actually on page 107, it talks about the black walkout at Kent State University and the May 4th shooting. And I would just sit and talk to people about the fact that I was at the shooting. And I would tell that story and they say, you should write about that. And so as I started to put things together, I started to chronicle what happened before that. And it is significant to me that this February 1970, 50 years ago, we started the month-long celebration of Black history from a week to a month. And actually, it also feeds into the fact that about 50 years ago, this whole funk genre started. And, I'm claiming that Dayton has more groups from Dayton that had records on the Hot 100 charts or the Hot 200 charts of Billboard than any other city in the world per capita. So the emphasis is the fact that I was involved, one, at Kent State University, but two, here locally in Dayton. And in fact, from that group, the Majestics, we had 3 members go to become members of the Ohio Players. We had Byron Byrd and Hollis Melson, who were in Sun. We had Chris Jones that was in the group Dayton, and we had Doug Thompson that was the drummer for Mother's Finest. So I don't think there's another group in Dayton that can bolster that many members of their group that went national. But in fact, the book also references the 18 acts that I am suggesting came from Dayton that had records once again on the Hot 100 or the Hot 200 of Billboard. And not only that, I also referenced in the book the local acts there were more than 35 local acts here in Dayton, of which the Sidewinders is one. And we do remember the fact that you played with the Sidewinders.
That's right, and I appreciate you mentioning that. Let's talk a little bit about Mr. Philip Bass.
Okay.
All right. Now you come out of what high school?
Roosevelt High School.
Okay.
And there's a heavy emphasis in the book on Roosevelt High School and the amount or the number of performers that came from Roosevelt, and some of the things that happened in and around Roosevelt. I refer to Roosevelt as the Ken and Barbie of that time. Right on the corner from Roosevelt, we had a movie theater. We also had the Teddy Bear sandwich shop, the Sugar Bowl, and on down the street we had Charlie's Bakery, and the next block over we had the Golden Point. So that was a whole block for teenagers.
15-cent hamburgers.
Yeah, a whole block for teenagers to entertain themselves, and it was just a magical time.
And that's the thing that here what we're trying to do is get the young people back into instrumentation, Philip. You know, it is now everybody has a little keyboard and they think they can make every sound, and it just upsets me as a musician. Even though I was nothing but a drummer, but I love the big band sound, funky horns.
Wait, it starts with the drummer now.
You know,
not only a drummer. The drummer is.
But I'm saying nowadays they're using drum machines. And you understand what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
So it is just so nice that your book goes back to referencing musicians, man.
Yes.
You know, we now today can't hardly name a musician.
Or a musical group.
You see what I'm saying?
In Dayton.
So that's the thing I love about this book here that you have, man.
Yeah.
You're keeping it out there. You're letting people know, and especially for the city of Dayton, this is outstanding.
Thank you.
And you know, so let's get with the on how you got to getting this book out.
But okay, I also want to thank David Webb for keeping in front of people the fact that we want to encourage young people to play.
That's right.
And it's a proven fact that those that are in music do better in math and science. And so I'm retired from the Dayton Public School system, and this is not to kick them in the leg, but these musicians were trained locally.
That's right.
They learned to play in elementary school and in high school. And from there, it's the competition that developed in Dayton between these bands and wanting to compete in these talent shows and to be able to get work and that kind of stuff.
Let me tell you, it was so many bands with competition that we had talent shows and we're
the showmobile.
Show wagon.
Yeah.
You know, go to the parks, man, and just jam for a good hour and a half.
Yeah.
But you know, I just remember all the, you know, from especially in the Dayton high schools, even though I went to Jefferson Township, but Roosevelt had the big auditorium and and stuff where we can bring in Roth had those auditoriums where we can bring local bands in and just have them do talent shows.
And I referenced Roosevelt, but we do not want to take away from the fact that we had music everywhere, and we had some great people come out of Dunbar and Jefferson and some other places, and I know I'm going to miss some people, but of course James Diamond Williams played in the Pythagoreans and played in the Dunbar marching band, as well as Keith Harrison in Jefferson Township. And of course, we had Slave and some other people, Lakeside, come out of Rolfe High School. But it does speak to the development of the music in West Dayton, and that there were some things that happened on Fifth Street with, when my mother and my grandmother were frequenting Fifth Street, to where James Brown and all the popular performers would come to Dayton.
Everybody
And I think it's an outgrowth of wanting their children to perform, because we were pushed into music. I know I wanted to play, but others were pushed into music. And as a result of that, we had a myriad of people to approach to say, you know, we're going to be in a talent show. Would you want to play with us? I know that's how I got involved with a band, a guy by the name of Mike Watts and Mike Wallace. They came to a practice at Roosevelt High School in the summer. You know, you would get ready for the premiere in Dayton in the summer. That was a big football game. And it's featured four schools. They would play just a half a piece. But the point is, they came to a practice in the summer at Roosevelt to approach me to say, we're going to participate in the Rolfe Talent Show. And they also asked Byron Byrd and Chris Jones. And we met over Mike Watts' house. And that's where the Majestics were formed for the purpose of competing in the Rolfe Talent Show.
Yes.
And that was a big thing.
Big things back then, man. But it kept the young minds interested in music. Even though I was even playing professionally at the age of 13 years old, my parents still made me go back and take lessons.
That's right.
I'm already, you know, when you're 13, 14,
Yeah,
man, and you're already, I'm happy.
That's right.
You know, I don't need no lessons.
Yes,
I'm
that's right.
already good.
That's
but
right.
that's your parents' mindset was, okay, you play your instrument great, but you don't know what you're playing. You see what I'm saying?
Right. You're
and
just
so
playing
that's,
at it.
Yeah. But going back and taking lessons and knowing the rudiments and stuff of a drummer and things like that. But that's what makes these musicians still playing today.
That's correct.
You know what I'm saying?
That's right. You got to go back and study. And let me not forget that your brother also played with us in those first few talent shows. But there was a love for music that developed. And as a result of that, we started the Woodshed, and we would, you know, on every other block you could hear groups playing. And so there was a lot of opportunity to learn from another person. But everybody wasn't getting private lessons.
No.
But the soul of Dayton certainly emerged through those groups. And once again, I went to Whittier Elementary School. I spent a year at Westwood, and then I went to Roosevelt in the 8th grade. And I was fired up everywhere I went.
Well, let's talk about when you started playing. Okay, you know, just give us a little information on the band. Well, if you can remember
in the group. In the book, I referenced the fact that in the 4th grade, the music teacher came down to the class and he said, anybody that's interested in playing an instrument, you can come down to the music room and choose an instrument. So when I went down to the music room, there was only 2 or 3 instruments there, and I chose the saxophone.
Okay.
And I can't say what drew me to the saxophone, but I chose the saxophone, and the music director said, well, you know, you're kind of small-built guy. Maybe you should play the flute. And I said, no. I got somebody that's going to help me take the saxophone home. But when he said small-built, he was talking about me being able to carry the saxophone. And in fact, this guy, he didn't know he was going to help me, but he lived across the alley from me. And, you know, I would carry it a little ways, and he would carry the saxophone a little ways. That was Edwin Hobson. But from there, I would sit up in my window, and I grew up in Dunbar Manor. We thought they were, we called them apartments at the time, but they were down the street from DeSoto Bass, and we thought we were a little higher up on the scale.
That's right.
But Dunbar Manor was between 2 railroad tracks. So I would sit in my window and I would practice, and Edwin, who would help me, I guess he got a little jealous, and so he went back to the music director, and he said he wanted to play, and all he had left was the tuba. So 2 days a week we were helping each other carry the saxophone, and the other 2 days we were helping each other carry the tuba. So that's where this whole thing started. But after about 3 or 4 weeks, he stopped. His interest in the tuba waned, but I continued to play. So I started playing in the 4th grade, and when I got to Westwood in the 7th grade, music was there, and I continued in the 7th grade. And in fact, in the 8th grade, I played in the Roosevelt band.
So when did how old were you when you started playing in a band to where you were even maybe getting $5-10 a night?
I was 15 years old.
Okay.
And what happened was, after we won the Rolfe talent show, and then Dunbar and Roosevelt would have talent shows, and as I remember, we won the Dunbar talent show, and then the band was like, well, what else are we gonna do? I mean, we can't just exist to be in talent shows. And so we got a manager. It was the drummer's mother, and she got us some gigs, and she would chaperone us. And in fact, I did start to get paid, and that's considered being professional at the age of 15.
That's outstanding.
And from there, we were competing with the Sidewinders and the Imperials to get gigs. Now, the Ohio players, who were called the Players at the time, were a 5-piece band. And we weren't competing with them because they were traveling. They were on the road. They would go to Detroit and New York. And so they were kind of leading the pack. That's who we wanted to be like. But the Imperials, who became the Dayton Imperials, they were basically out of Dunbar. And they had so many gigs. They were working every weekend that they weren't competing in these talent shows either. But we wanted to work like them, but be like the Players. Right. And so
because back then there were so many places you could play. One.
Yes.
Two, they were so many because the Sidewinders, we did a lot of balls. Potentate ball,
yes,
Postal Union ball,
yes,
and of course everybody. We were one of the first bands at the Lakeview Palladium.
There you go.
That's when everything kind of moved from Wampler's Ball Arena to the Lakeview Palladium, with live entertainment. And I mean, local bands had places to go. People would rent these facilities out and keep their dances going. And that's what makes these musicians still good today. They've been playing these instruments for 40, 50 years and still doing a good job.
Absolutely.
Your book, I want to get back to it for a minute. You are saying that, I'm bringing you up to now because I'm trying to get a better understanding and have our viewers get a better understanding on what made you put this book out.
What motivated me?
What motivated you?
Yes.
And also, did you have any help with this? Did someone help you get your information?
No, I kind of did the research myself, but I want to pay tribute to Scott Brown.
Okay.
I don't know if you've met Scott Brown or have had him on the show, but Scott Brown was invited to University of Dayton to speak. And I know I got invited and several other people got invited, and he was going to give this presentation on the music that came out of Dayton. And you know, when Scott hears this, hopefully he's going to laugh, but it sounded like somebody trying to talk about your family, but they only knew your cousin.
Okay.
And so, you know, it's like he was telling the story, but he didn't know the whole story. And so, in fact, I think it was the history department that brought him there, and the director of the history department asked us if there's anybody in the audience that was around during that time, would you please stand? And I was one of 6 that stood. Keith Harrison was one of them, and I told him that I had Tune 1, Side 1 on the Ohio Players graduation album, and the room was full of young students, and they clapped, which signaled to me there's an interest in something that happened back 50 years ago. And so what I started to do from there, I talked to Keith and I said, well, actually, as we walked out the building, the director of the history department was walking out with us. And I asked her, or I told her, you don't have to go to California to get somebody to tell the Dayton story. Would you have a problem with us or somebody from here telling the Dayton story? And that really was the spark to put this book together like it is. Once again, I started to write notes about the black walkout that happened in the fall of 1968, and I was also involved.
Black walkout.
Oh, okay.
Explain
I'm
that.
sorry. Graduated from Roosevelt High School in 1968. My father said, well, I don't have enough money to send you there for a year. I can take you there. I got enough for a quarter. You want me to give you the money, or do you want me to take you to Kent State? And so my attitude was, I need to leave Dayton for right now. There was a product that was going around in Dayton. It's called Blue Magic, and the American Gangster story told about that. But people were dying on their porches. In fact, musicians were dying on their porches shooting heroin. And so people on the weekend would chase Red Devils, Blue Tips, Black
So
Beauty.
the drug scene was taken over.
Yeah, and I wanted to get away from that. And what I didn't tell my father was, I wasn't planning on coming back right away. And so when I got to Kent, 4 weeks later, the Oakland Police Department came to Kent to recruit for the police department. And this is the same police department that had just killed some Black Panthers in Oakland, California, as well as incarcerated Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale. And so I knew who those people were. There was a group of students that had formed Black United Students that previous spring, and they were very concentrated on the fact that we're not going to let this happen. We're not going to let them recruit for the Oakland Police Department at Kent State University. So in fact, we had a sit-in, and I found myself feeling like I was in the civil rights movement. But they told us to lock arms, put the women in the middle, and I said, I'm getting ready to get my head cracked, and I don't even know these guys. But I grew up a little bit then, and that has a lot to do with me being here right now. But in fact, the police did not come in. We did not get hurt. We declared victory, and we were told to 2 males walk a female to their dorm. The next day, they expelled 8 seniors that were in this sit-in. And I was there, but I wasn't being approached, and it felt like they were attacking these 8 seniors who were going to graduate, that school year. And so, in fact, BUS, Black United Students, decided, well, we're not going to let this happen. We're going to ask for amnesty. I didn't know what amnesty was at the time, but they decided, if they don't give these 8 seniors amnesty, we're going to walk out. And so everybody was to take one bag. We had armbands, and we walked in silence as from dorm to dorm, they would pick up this group, and they just celebrated that. I just left a couple weeks ago. They celebrated this very event, and we walked through the gates silently, and we picked up a huge crowd, and it just felt like something was going to happen. But went across the street from the university. We boarded 3 buses. We went to Akron, and we slept in the basement of a church. And once again, this is building a certain character in me.
It does.
And so coming back, and of course we thought when we got over there we were going to play some basketball, shoot some dice, something like that. But the older students said, no, that's not what we're going to do. If you're in sociology, you go to this room. If you're in, science, we're going to have the students go to this room. But it let me know how serious the upperclassmen were about handling business, making sure that people got their education, and also protecting those that were involved in this. So that was very traumatic. Nothing terrible happened to me physically, but I grew up a lot in the fall of '68. And so, in fact, Kent State had the May 4th shooting, and I witnessed that. I mean, I was there on the grounds. So once again, you remember the song "4 Dead in Ohio," and the Isley Brothers did that. Right. And so there were just some things that were happening that I wanted to write about, and I found myself wanting to write about my experiences in Dayton as well. And so musically, we probably had 125 people that were involved in music in Dayton at that time. Hopefully I'm answering your questions.
You are. And my thing is that when we talk more about your book, and we're definitely talking about Dayton, the funk capital of the world, how let me get your input here on how important it is for us to keep this legacy alive.
Yes.
And especially with David Webb and the Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center. Please just expound on that just a little bit.
I'm glad you asked me that question. And I just explained to you, as I touched on civil rights, I felt like I was in civil rights, but the civil rights movement, in my opinion, and that's what I write about, developed the stage for funk music. Funk music is an expression of freedom. You and I came up doing R&B, and R&B fueled the civil rights movement. In other words, gospel and some of the gospel songs that they sang, but it was R&B and Motown and Stax Records that kept them energized. And so actually funk is an expression of freedom from the civil rights movement through R&B. And I'm challenging those that are interested to get a copy of this book and see that happen. Also, in the book, we talk about, I allege that there was an attempt to wash funk out with disco music, which is a little different than funk. But then that takes it back to this whole rap genre, and I'm not negative on rap, but there were attempts to wash this funk out, but rap actually picked the funk up and used it as a backdrop to rap to.
That's right.
And so I think there's room for funk today. In fact, we need a funk on Sirius Radio.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
And here's the thing that when you brought up that when the disco era came in,
yes.
I'm not gonna lie, man. A lot of bands were losing gigs.
That's right.
Because the nightclubs were turning into discotheques.
That's correct.
And all they were hiring was these DJs.
Yep.
And live music was disappearing, man. From gigging 2 to 3 nights a week to once a month to every other month.
There you go.
And I said, oh my goodness, what's going on here? You know,
it hurt.
It hurt, man. Especially when you were a musician out there trying to make it. It really did.
It hurt.
You got some other excerpts in this book that you definitely want to point out before our time runs out.
Well, once again, one of the features of the book is the 18 groups that came out of Dayton, and if you will, I know you shouldn't just list things, but I want to give credit to the fact that these groups are from Dayton some kind of way. So if I could, this is in no particular order, but we had the Ohio Players, Roger, Son, Sugarfoot had an album, Platypus, Shadow, who were three guys that were from the Ohio Players, Steve Arrington, who was from Slave, Heatwave, Zap, Dayton, Vesta, who was actually from Chillicothe, Ohio, but she was 18 here when she got started on her solo career. Mother's Finest, who lives in Atlanta. Two people from Chicago came to Dayton, and that's where they got started. Aura, who was from Slave, Lakeside, Shirley Murdoch, Fazo, Junie, who was from the Ohio Players and wrote the funk anthem, One Nation Under a Groove, played with the Funkadelic and had 5 solo acts itself. And then I have Little Axe, who was Skip McDonald, who started playing when he was about 12 years old. Little Axe is actually a blues band, but I wanted to mention Skip because he was very much involved in Dayton with the Huntsy and the Entertainers and some other groups.
Now, as far as getting this book, how can that be done?
Well, we're on Amazon.com.
Okay.
But I'd like to send you a signed copy.
Okay.
So if you would get a hold of me by way of Dayton Hot Fox at gmail.com, that's DYTHOTFOXX at gmail.com, I will get you a copy of this book that's signed. So you can get it from Amazon.com, but it's going to cost you a little more than if you get it from me. But I'd like to see as many people as, I tell you, people are buying 2, 3, and 4 of these books and getting it to their friends, and then they're having parties talking about this stuff. That's
what I'm saying. This is a book, man, that will just start a conversation, and you can keep talking for hours. You know? Now, the thing that really got me, the title. How did that come about? How did that come about?
Well, the title is Pour Some Water on Me, Dayton, the funk capital of the world, and developing a friendship with Sugarfoot. The Players were recording on Westbound, and then they moved to Mercury Records. And so after a recording session in Mercury, he was in his apartment, and I was there, and he said, I want to let you hear something. And then I heard this track. You know, it had the fire engines going off, and then it had this guitar riff that I had never heard before, and it just gave me tingles. Now, Billy Beck, who played keyboard with the Players, he was staying next door, so we called Billy Beck over, and he said, you know, should I allow Flip to hear the track with the words? And he said, go ahead. So they let me hear the words with this fire engine and this guitar track, and I said, man, you guys are gonna have to get bigger houses, man. This I've never heard a song like this. And that song was Fire. And there's a bridge in Fire that says, pour some water on me.
It does, yeah.
And that's where this comes from. Now later, we had an exhibit at the National Afro-American Museum in Wilberforce that had 4 rooms, and it was called Something in the Water. And so that reinforced the fact that I wanted that title on the top. I'm proud of the book.
And you should be.
Thank you.
You really should be. Mr. Bassett, again, I want to really thank you, my man, for coming and expressing and definitely giving us this information on Pour Some Water on Me, Dayton, the funk capital of the world.
Thank
man.
you.
And again, in behalf of all of us here at the Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center,
sir.
This is definitely something that everybody's going to be interested in. We sure appreciate you, sir.
And we're going to support your efforts to do
Again,
it.
thank you so much for coming, all right?
All right.
This is Stan the Man, host of the Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center's award-winning show, Funk Chronicles. Until next time, keep it funky.